So we're going to do a talk that I actually came up with first like a couple of months ago, and I've talked about it a couple of times since then, but this is a really interesting and really important fundamental idea in our practice, and it's our physical practice and our meditation and internal practice too. So it's this idea that we can recognize problems. What did I say? What's it called? Recognizing problems as opportunities. So normally something happens and it's like not part of the plan, and we see it and we say to ourselves, problem. And the way that we deal with a problem is fundamentally different with the way that we deal with opportunities. And I'm not just trying to talk about like positive thinking and just like make lemons out of lemonade or lemonade out of lemons. Most people make lemons out of lemonade, but that's the picture that we put on the Facebook post, so I shouldn't trash talk that. But it's similar enough that it's going to be kind of confusing, the difference between the two. What I'm saying is it's a paradigm shift. And it's not like making the most out of a bad situation. It's recognizing that this thing that we would normally see as a bad situation is actually an opportunity, and it's not something to fight against. So a problem is something that we fight against. It's something that we view negatively. It's something that we have a tendency to like lose energy when we're dealing with, right? But an opportunity is something that we see as being exciting. It's something that we kind of get creative with. It's something that is generally like positive and a good thing. Now, the example that I experienced that made me think of this was I was grappling with somebody, and this was a student who'd been practicing a little bit longer than me at Hadra Machado School, and I was just kind of sitting back, and he grabbed my ankle, and I saw that, I felt that, and I thought, like a lot of us do, oh, that's a problem. I got to deal with that grabbing of my ankle, right? And so I start to like pummel my leg and try to strip his arm off of it. And this student reminded me of an incredibly important lesson. He said, this is great for you. Look, if I grab your ankle like this, you just trap my arm, stick your leg underneath me, and you can do a butterfly sweep. And I did it, and it was like very easy. It's way easier than trying to do the butterfly guard sweep in a normal situation, because this grab is the opportunity. And in the moment, I just thought like, yes, great, got it. And jiu-jitsu and kung fu and tai chi, it's filled with these types of experiences where we have something that seems like a problem, and we have to like fight against it or come up with a solution rather than just recognizing it as actually, this is like, they just opened this door for me to go through and made this technique that usually is very difficult to do. They just made this very easy for me. And it's, like I said, it's a different way of looking at things. So I want to do a couple of readings actually from this book that we just got into the dojo. It's one of my favorites. I've read it several times. This is The Way of Chuang Tzu. And this first one, this is called The Man with One Foot and the Marsh Pheasant. I'm just going to skip over the marsh pheasant part and just focus on the man with one foot. So, Kung Wen Sin saw a maimed official whose left foot had been cut off, a penalty in the political game. What kind of man, he cried, is this one-footed oddity? How did he get that way? Shall we say man did this or heaven? Heaven, he said. This comes from heaven, not from man. When heaven gave this man life, it willed he should stand out from others, and sent him into politics to get himself distinguished. See, 1 foot. This man is different. And this is like an extreme example of this. Instead of just getting his ankle grabbed, he got his whole foot cut off. but he's looking at it like an opportunity. And it's like, this is how I distinguish myself. This is how I'm different from other people. And I mean, maybe it sounds like having your foot cut off as a politician is like a kind of a semi-regular occurrence back in the day in China, but it obviously distinguishes yourself from other people. And if you think about it, most of us would not get our foot cut off and think of it like, this is great. Now everyone's going to recognize me, and this is, I'm very different from other people now. Most of us would look at it and say, ah! And then we would say, what the hell am I going to do with one foot? Now I got to hop around all over the place, and this is just like very annoying at least, and like terrible and debilitating, and life altering or ending in some cases for people. Like this, what am I going to do now? But first of all, we're not usually faced with such extreme cases. We're faced with things that are a little bit more easily dealt with. But it's the same kind of idea where if you can see this thing that most people see as a problem and nothing more, this guy could do it with a foot that was cut off. You can do that with anything that we experience in life. And there are things that seem very difficult to deal with, and I'm not necessarily saying like, my grandpa is dying, it's a great opportunity. I'm saying like, in most situations, you can recognize the opportunity that is there. And it really should have the feeling like, let's say you're grappling with somebody and they get a grab or a control of some kind. It's like, before I could move this leg, it was free. It's like this door was open for this foot. They shut the door on the foot. They grab it, they shut the door. But whenever they grab the foot and shut down the door, then it's essentially like they're opening a window, right? And so that is the case in this situation, to be able to see that and recognize the window that's open and not see it as less than. It's like, before I had a whole door, now I just have a window. It's just different. It's just a different circumstance. It's a different direction to go in. And that's not the way that we usually handle things. It's like, I was going this way and this is the way that I've got to go, and we get attached to it. Rather than, this other thing happens and I recognize I can just very easily steer off this way and go in this direction. Easy, just go right out the window. So another one that I want to read is called The Useless Tree. Huizu said to Chuang, I have a big tree, the kind they call a stink tree. The trunk is so distorted, so full of knots, no one can get a straight plank out of it. The branches are so crooked, you cannot cut them up in any way that makes sense. There it stands beside the road. No carpenter will even look at it. Such is your teaching, big and useless. Chuangzu replied, have you ever watched the wild cat, crouching, watching its prey? This way it leaps and that way, high and low, and at last lands in the trap. But have you seen the yak? Great as a thunder cloud, he stands in his might. Big? Sure, he can't catch mice. So for your big tree, no use? Then plant it in the wasteland, in emptiness. Walk idly around, rest under its shadow. No axe or bill prepares its end. No axe or bill prepares its end. No one will ever cut it down. Useless? You should worry. So it's like kind of got a couple of meanings. I like this idea of a tree that is just like so ugly that nobody will use it for anything. And the owner looks at it and says, like, what am I going to do? I can't cut this down. I can't sell it for lumber. I can't use it for anything. But the tree is pretty happy because no one's going to cut it down. No one's going to use it for anything. It's just going to be able to sit there and be ugly and be a stink tree. But Chuangzu's point is like, you got to look at this from a different perspective. You look at trees as, this is a thing that you've got to cut down and sell for lumber. And we get attached to that, right? But you can look at this tree as something completely different. This is something that I can just lay in its shade, or it can just be like this thing there that you can walk around it idly. It's not being attached to this, it's seeing and recognizing the opportunity in it. And this is an idea that is really talked about well in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. He talks about mind weeds. And it's like when we meditate, we run up against these thoughts, these attachments, these inabilities to clear our mind. And the author says this is great. What you do is you find that weed and you dig it up and you bury it really deep. And then it becomes food for your garden. Now, I don't know that much about gardening, and I don't know what happens when you bury weeds. I kind of think they just like grow back into weeds. But the concept is nice, where if you can take this weed and bury it and use it for food, it's nourishment for the rest of your garden. It's the same thing with your meditation. You run into this difficulty in your meditation, and you kind of cultivate that. You bury it and you use it. And it's just a recognition of the true nature of it. Like, this is what meditation is about. You have to run up against these difficulties and you have to deal with them. If you sit and meditate and it's just easy and you have no mind weeds, there's no growth happening. There's no evolution on a deep level. So we have to be able to recognize these things as the opportunity that they are. And there are lots of different ways that we do this in our practice outside of meditation. Tai Chi, I was talking about this, great examples. Like, Kenny, let me steal you, sir. So when you're practicing push hands with somebody in Tai Chi, you see this partner pushing you as, oh, this is a problem, they're pushing me. I have to deal with that problem, right? So the way that you deal with a problem is usually forcing against it. This is what most people do when they get pushed in the beginning, is just to try to stop it. And this is the typical way that we deal with a problem. This is the stupid way of dealing with the problem. Instead, recognize it as an opportunity. So we see he's pushing. Ooh, I can use that energy from his push and feed it back in to push my partner. Or, ooh, he's pushing me and I can use that to pull him off balance and win that way. Thank you, sir. It's really attachment to the way that we think things are supposed to go that stops us from recognizing the opportunity there. So when we get really good at our physical practice, everything that we do in more advanced drills like sparring and free grappling, or chin-on throws with your partner, all of this has this kind of feeling to it, where every time your partner attacks, it feels like an opportunity because I accept it and I can redirect it, I can use it to my advantage. Rather than when we first start and your partner starts doing something and you just go, oh, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what to do with this. And you fight against it and you force against it and you try to stop it. So acceptance. Acceptance is a great way past attachment. We accept the way that things are rather than being attached to the way that things used to be or the way that we really wanted them to be. And then we move on. So we practice that in meditation as well. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to sit comfortably, and when the thought comes, rather than being attached to the thought, you just let it go. Or the thought comes, and rather than being attached to, I was supposed to be meditating and I was not supposed to be thinking what's wrong with me, I just accept the thought, let it pass right through me, and then come back to the breath. And you really run into something that you're struggling to get past, some kind of thought, some kind of attachment. I'm unable to sit comfortably, I've got to move, whatever. You recognize that, that's just a weed. You bury it deep and use it as nourishment. That's the opportunity there. Sit comfortably.